Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome. Human beings are the fastest evolving species. Today's times are no better example of how we are expected to unfold and devise. And one of the significant changes is the transformation in healthcare. Virtual is the new norm, and virtual health is the new transformation in the healthcare system. Welcoming you all to an interesting session as we are here to discuss about the rise of virtual healthcare and new career opportunities. Virtual health has the capacity to inform, personalize, accelerate, augment prevention and care. Patient monitoring, treating patients with chronic conditions, and remote patient management are the core components of what we all understand. Let's now hear from the experts and our panelist team on how this evolution is changing the industry landscape in healthcare, increasing the demand for tech, infrastructure, and talent, and creating more work opportunities. Let me start by welcoming our esteemed panelists on the dais today. We first welcome Mr. Sundarajan Sreenivasan. With 30 years of work experience in developing and leading innovations in India, Asia, and Europe, he holds a master's degree from IIT Bombay. During his last stint as managing director of Intel Mobile Communications India, he was instrumental in leading the development of social for penetration of mobile internet for rural India. Over the last 3 years, Mr. Sundar has been associated with Ubiquare Health, a startup in healthcare, as their co-founder and CMD, working towards innovation and technology. Welcome, Mr. Sundar.
Thank you.
Our next panelist, Mr. Suresh Subramanian, lead consultant, strategist, solutions and business leader for Indegene Life Systems, Bangalore. Mr. Suresh carries over 3 decades of experience in biopharmaceutical, healthcare consulting. His career span has been an exciting one while being associated with organizations such as GSK, Novartis, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, and Biocon. He has also been instrumental in actively mentoring healthcare startups and developing them. Thank you, Mr. Suresh, for being here with us today. We next have our panelist, Ms. Samata Ballal. Samata brings in 16 plus years of experience across businesses, leadership, and people. She's part of the leadership management team with Medibuddy, India's leading digital healthcare platform. Currently, she heads people and culture in her portfolio. Samata has led several projects in HR transformation, employee engagement, and digitalization. She has also worked on best practices and innovation at workplace initiatives. We also congratulate Samata's innovative design thinking in the field of HR at MediAssist that was recognized by the World HRD Congress. Welcome, Samata, to the panel. We next have our speaker and moderator for the session, Ms. Namrata Arora, Head HR and External Communications with Onco.com, world's first patient-centric cancer care management platform. Namrata is an alumni of Muslim Aligarh University and holds a psychology and human resources degree. She comes with 14 plus years of experience across diverse businesses, including IT, retail, and healthcare. Being one of the early employees of Onco.com, she has been pivotal in setting HR processes, team, and framework for people and business. Thank you, Namrata, for being with us here today. And may I please now request you to kindly take the discussion ahead and moderate the session for us.
Thank you, Munira. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. Really, it's a pleasure. Hello to all the panelists. So let's start with the questions. So the very first question here is, what are your thoughts on the rising growth in virtual healthcare? Has the pandemic impacted the same? Will post-COVID era see similar or increase in the scale? So I would request Sundarajan to share his views.
Thank you, Namrata. Just before I plunge into answering, I just want to make one small minor correction to the introduction, just because it's probably a little sensitive. I was a managing director in Intel Communications in Germany, Munich, and not in India. Having said that, the term virtual healthcare actually triggers a lot of memory. In 2017, when I left Intel, 3 of us got together and said, let's start up a business to bring in virtualization in healthcare. And that's how we got started off in setting up our company, startup called Ubiquare Health. But there's one caveat that I want to leave here, because unlike other industry applications of virtualization, healthcare, virtualization is never pure virtual, right? I mean, you have to combine technology and touch. There has to be trust, maintenance of trust, and there has to be teamwork, right? So in that context of virtualization, I see virtualization of healthcare or virtual healthcare as a natural evolution of telemedicine, which has been around for a long time. But it acquired momentum recently, the past few years, as many governments around the world started legislating telemedicine. And so many models have sprung up. And I think India too was not far behind. Last year, in response to pandemic, India also made telemedicine legal, and that has lowered a lot of barriers of adoption. And therefore, we also see, and we will continue to see, more and more solutions springing up in the area of virtual healthcare or telehealthcare or what you will, right? The question of whether pandemic has really accelerated it, yeah, it definitely has accelerated. I mean, we ourselves have been in this before the pandemic and during the pandemic, and we have seen many people who were resistant to this suddenly coming up. Many hospitals have started engaging with their own patients through teleconsultations. So it is definitely a step forward for the industry. There's no doubt about it. And there are many startup initiatives, many NGOs, many grown corporates who have demonstrated that there can be new models of healthcare, which combines virtualization and also physical presence to be able to bring viable, credible, and safe alternatives to healthcare as such. And these pathways have actually been proven to be beneficial not only for the consumers, but also for the healthcare providers in very many ways. Affordability is one, access to expertise is another, right? Then the healthcare capacity as such gets augmented, because the hospital need not consider only their internal beds as their beds. The beds at home is also can be actually added to that capacity. The third interesting question you asked, Namrata, is post-COVID, what can we expect? Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I'm not sure if we all agree on this, but sometime after the first wave was going down, not only in India, but across many of the countries, the number of teleconsultations started dropping down. Yeah, back to the pre-COVID days. So it's a good lesson in us that while people would have got more accepted the remote consultation as a viable way of connecting, they still prefer the touch. They still prefer the physical presence whenever it is feasible, whenever it is possible, right? So I think that behavior change will still take some time. We shouldn't expect that this will continue like this. That would be a significant return to the pre-COVID, is my guess. But nevertheless, there would be certain segments of the society and availing certain services which would actually be continuing what they have done during this time. That's my take on this.
Yes, thank you, Sundarajan. Suresh, how about you? What are your views on this?
You're muted, Suresh.
You're on mute, sir. Yeah.
Thank you, Namrata. This is very interesting, because what we are getting to see is a change in tack, if you may, with the existing players and many new players coming in the healthcare realm. I'm now, kind of limiting myself to India. Typically, if you really see the healthcare that is there, or was there a couple of years ago, for many decades, you essentially had the pharma and the hospitals, which were service providers and providing medicine. And then everything else was left to everything else, whether you had money or could not afford. And you had the government playing a small role through government hospitals, right, which was essentially in critical illnesses, right? But as you see now, though there are technologies which have been coming up for the last couple of years, the pandemic has really kind of brought in a lot of change in behavior and made technology acceptance and use really rampant. And some of the things that we have seen in telehealth and many of the home care practices that we have seen are indeed phenomenal. So if I were to paint existing healthcare of basically being pharma, hospitals, doctor clinics, which are individual and small shops, and basically some small play of insurance, right, which was about 8 to 10. But I think when you really look at the healthcare, you need to kind of say what is changing in the existing players of pharma, hospitals, and insurance and doctor clinics, right? They are undergoing change, right? When the pandemic has accelerated. Pharma, for example, the reach across the doctors is now going phygital. The touch and technology, as Sundarajan was saying, that physical and digital means. So there are companies trying to talk to their customers, which is doctors and other paramedical through an omni-channel and a virtual experience. So you have a doctor who is not able to see a medical rep or a company person, a pharmaceutical company person. They're now being accessed through various channels and various means, right? So that is one thing that pharma companies are going through. Second is in the area of distribution, right? Today, supply chain issues in the pandemic were very, very, that challenge was thrown in, and to have a demand-based distribution is something that every pharma company is now focusing on. So there's a lot of virtual digitization and improvement that is happening in the supply chain. And the demands on packaging, right? If you want to transport your COVID vaccines, which have to have a temperature, much below, somewhere around -10 or -20, and it has to reach remote locations, then, distribution and packaging and remotely monitoring them is also very important. So I think these are the very, in front of your eyes changes that are happening in companies that are coming forward to kind of fill up the gaps. Then you have the clinical and R&D. Look at what, we have repurposed so many drugs, right? And therefore, real world evidence and data mining are becoming very important to kind of bring in new solutions so R&D is kind of looking at it differently. From a clinical and preclinical perspectives, digital models are emerging to say, what is a kind of preclinical, testing model that you have to, how can you recruit patients digitally? So all these are areas in clinical trial, in the clinical segment that are really coming up as new areas from an established pharma operation, if you may. Hospitals are kind of saying, okay, people are not traveling to hospitals. Hospitals essentially in India are centers of excellence. The critical illness, patients get admitted for critical illness or serious ailments like cancer and many other terminal illnesses, right? Today, you have travel being an issue, and therefore hospitals are now trying to see how they can change their entire model of, say, providing care remotely. And what is interesting is, be it the pharma or hospitals, are now not wanting to do everything themselves. There is an ecosystem that they want to participate with which they say they can, they are trying to give out healthcare. Like Max, I remember Max Hospitals and Apollo, a large part, from about 8 to 10% or some 20% of their footfalls coming through telecall centers. Today, they are able to deliver in the pandemic around 40 to 50% of all their outreach through telecalling, telehealth. And that is something that are approaching. Now, when you look at the new incumbents that are coming, you have, new incumbents like Portia, Ubiquare, Mr. Sundarajan's company. They all, you want to set up an ICU at home, you want to set up a dialyzer at home, you want to set up if you may, many other treatment facilities which aging populations require who cannot travel and all that is possible, right, with technology and remote monitoring. So you are able to provide quality healthcare and also access patients who are inconvenienced at the current moment. And you also want to look at patient support in terms of, when you look at some of the virtual things that have come up, like digital therapeutics, right, and point of care devices, the ability to inform the patient, right, and not depend on memory or what the patient says. There's more data on actually what is happening to the patients, which are information to the patient, caregivers, and the doctors. You're able to kind of individualize therapy and kind of take it forward. I will just take a couple of more minutes, to say what else does it offer. In India, we always have a crunch of doctors. We have a crunch of whole host of health services that is there, and I think technology will provide for it. The ability to kind of impact on the doctor population ratio is very high through telehealth, right? You need not have physical doctors, right? What happens if you put a decision, support or an algorithm in the hands of a quack? Today quacks are, spread across into the interiors where you do not have. But all you need is you need to train those people and put a decision algorithm, a support in their hands through a device, and they can give almost as good as a general practitioner, at least an initial therapy. The second is the electronic records, health records, right? Today, thanks to Ayushman Bharat, we have started that journey, and I'm sure we will go ahead and fulfill the 100,000 clinics in the hinterland that we will have, and then connect those clinics to centers of care, which is the district hospitals and centers of excellence. You thereby have, like your Aadhaar card, which is your identity print, you will have a healthcare print. And that's happening as we speak with the Digital India, kind of taking up. So when these things come, there is a demand for analytics, which will inform you of, public policy that you have to take, government supply of drugs and personnel to address issues. So that space is growing as well. And in the next 5 years, I imagine them to kind of really, go ahead. So the point I want to say is that existing players are undergoing a lot of change, right, to efficiency and to reach out. The new players are filling in. You can't call it gap because they're coming in to kind of fill in places to improve outcomes, right? And those are newer models that are coming, but most of them are startups. And another trend and change is established players in the healthcare domain tying up with all these startups and forming ecosystems. That is the change that we are seeing. Now, to answer the last questions, will this change be reversible? If I ask my wife, will she stop buying from Big Basket or Amazon? I'm not sure I will get an answer that she will reverse back to or for that matter, me. I'm not sure I will reverse that decision, right? Whether certain elderly patients who are buying medicines from 1mg or any e-pharmacy, will they reverse that decision? I'm not sure. There will be, of course, a curve, but I think it will settle down at a much higher than the earlier normal. It might not peak to a paradigm, to a pandemic level, but it will kind of instill new habits and practices, and that's where I see it going. So this is broadly my starting comments on the landscape and how I see it, coming through.
Yes. So I agree to Sundarajan and Suresh's point of view. And to be very honest, I feel the pandemic has kind of, the reality, or let's say the pandemic, because of the pandemic, we are realizing the gap. And every time there is a gap, technology comes in. And that is how, today's technology, or let's say the virtual healthcare, is kind of bridging that gap. As you just, Suresh, you rightly put it, would we reverse the big basket or 1 mg? I don't think so. It's kind of, we are adjusting. We have already adopted to that, the online, which we never ever heard before, but we have adopted to it. So I guess that's the future. And coming to the next question now, Samata, I would address that question to you. So, how virtual healthcare will create more job opportunities and demand for remote healthcare jobs? What are the skills that would be required?
Okay. Thanks, Namrata. And maybe I'll a little bit start from where one of the points that Mr. Suresh touched upon, right? So today, I think, at least from the industry I come from, there are 4 P's of healthcare that I know of. The payers, right? The insurers, the corporates who pay for healthcare, right? Apart from, of course, the retail buyers who want it themselves. The second P is the products themselves. So there are people who produce this product. So be it the diagnostic product, the oximeter, the thermometer, to producing medicines, right? So there are the producers who are playing a significant role. The third one is the practitioners. There are enough nurses, doctors, people who are maybe BSc, MSc graduated, but know exactly what to do in the lab. So there are enough people who practice healthcare as an expertise. And of course, the last P is the providers, the hospitals, the labs who are providing this healthcare in one center of excellence, right? So in one place. Now the role that, like Mr. Suresh said, most of the startups are playing and some of us are trying to do, is we're trying to put all of this together, bridge the gap and see how we are delivering that value, right? How that value is going to be delivered, how a practitioner who's, there are around 7 lakh MBBS practitioners, around 7 lakh homeopathy practitioners. How are these reachable? How can somebody speak to an expert? So they are also specialized in various skills. How is somebody reachable? Maybe on a phone, maybe on a chat. I think today's consumer is very demanding. Sometimes we are comfortable chatting, sometimes we want a phone, sometimes we want a video consult. So in all 3 formats, how is it that people can be reached is where the value gets added to. And be it medicine, be it labs. So it's a mix of digital and physical thing. So maybe a digital workplace. I see jobs really increasing approximately to a 41% in next 4-5 years in spaces of technology, because all of this value add is going to happen because of automation, going to happen because of AI, is going to happen because of data intelligence, right? So I do see product managers, technology folks playing a very, very key role in enabling this whole thing. The second important, going to your second question, in terms of what skills maybe are required in this phase, I think the skills that will be sought for is, apart from the healthcare coordinators and the technical skills, and all of those skills will remain maybe similar. What is going to gain importance is the competence. So the competence of problem solving, the competence required to be very, very resilient, because suddenly what has pandemic taught us is there is suddenly so much of demand and each one of us are struggling to maybe get vaccines. We are struggling to identify solutions. So having people with the competence, with resilient mindset, being able to work in fragile environments, being able to adapt to change very fast, having a solution mindset. I think these are the competence that will be in demand in the near future. I am sure industries are going to look for people who have this competence. Plus, I think the skills are going to move from generalistic skill sets to very, very specific skill sets. I think with hybrid workplace culture that is going to come in future, there will be more need for leadership as well as the HR team members to maybe write down clear expectations of what is expected, right? Maybe put down clear expectations of what is expected, and hire that specific skill. And so it's going to move from a generalist to specific. So all the young aspirants, I would think that, more you think through on where is your ikigai and go and, learn more and become more, develop your competence and skills in those specific areas, the higher chances you get good jobs in what you want to do, right? I think that's one thing that's going to change. The role of leadership is going to be completely changed, right? So somebody from an operational excellence or a, authentic leadership style to now being an ethical leader, defining exactly those values that the organization stands for and displaying that irrespective of whether you authentically believe in it or not. you know Ethical leadership is going to take a precedence, and that's a skill move or a competence move that I see. The third thing is, of course, the role of a lot of managers. I think um, the pandemic has forced for a lot of managers to really scale up. I think engaging people who are working at home and are potentially disengaged, potentially not attached with your vision, engaging them, getting them oriented to what we are trying to do, putting expertise together and making it work together, and enabling productivity. I think that's where the managerial skills are really going to play. So putting in new metrics, trying to make sure that the solutions are actually arrived, and is where I think the managerial skills are going to see a shift. So that's for now, but yeah, I would be happy to explain more if there are questions.
Thank you, Samata. Sundarajan, we would like to hear your views also on this. Would you want me to repeat the question again? You're on mute, yeah.
No, I think it's good. I will just take the question one after another. So the first question will be, how would virtual healthcare create more job opportunities? And I think I saw a question in the chat box also flashing by. I think probably somebody is looking for very specific roles that one could articulate. I think we must understand that this is a transition stage, right? I mean, we should play along with the paradigms of change that we are seeing. What is the first paradigm of change? That is, a point of care is shifting from a centralized location like a hospital or a clinic to wherever the patient is. I think that's one paradigm, right? The second paradigm is, it's a collaborative mindset that comes in, right? Because you can no longer depend upon your own narrow ecosystem of people who are in the hospital, where the hospital has already established a certain economy of scale and certain control over operations. That can no longer apply here. So there must be a collaborative ecosystem that comes in, which is the second paradigm, right? Like what Samata said already, she already articulated a lot of skills and talents that would be required to evolve this. What specific roles they would all break up into or would materialize is something that we must observe, we must watch. And those who have been familiar with how virtualization made the world flat, right? I mean, there were many roles that created. So similar thing will actually happen here as well. When the healthcare becomes flat, there would be many roles that would come up, and it would depend upon the services that are required, right? So let's break this paradigm into multiple things. So when a point of care shifts, you have different ways of accessing the expertise, right? And then you also have different ways of providing the last mile touch that you can never take it away from healthcare, right? And then there would be delivery of services like medicines, or collecting samples, or equipment and monitoring and all those things. So delivery of expertise, delivery of inanimate things, and then delivery of physical services and touch, right? These are the three things that would come in. And then on top of it, the expectation would be that I want to have a very quick response time, right? You are monitoring me, my heart rate is increasing. Well, what will you do about it? Are you going to say, oh, all right, rush to the hospital? Then why do I need your service, right? So you will have all these kind of demands coming in, and this is something that we must see, we must watch, we must adapt as the trajectory unfolds, and then put in certain kinds of rules. And there will be certain boundary conditions of clinical safety which the healthcare providers will not cross. They would say, sorry, if this happens, we are not coming to you. We cannot, don't waste time. And there would be some things that they would actually put in, like what Suresh mentioned. Maybe dialysis is something that is easily accepted to be done at home. Even for children, peritoneal dialysis at home can be supervised by the mother with the help of a doctor. There are many such examples that will come in. And like what Samata said, they are all very narrowly specialized, specific things. And that's how the industry grows. So once we have these narrow, specific services proven to be safe, then somebody can consolidate them into a virtual hospital service, right, which is slightly broader. And then you will see more and more job opportunities coming in. So that's the kind of how these opportunities would come in. I can only hazard a guess on what it would be, but probably we'll do it a little later down the talk.
I just want to add after your point, Sundarajan. Sorry,
sure.
Go ahead.
Okay. The second point is, what are the skills that will be required? I think Samata has actually said a lot of things. Specifically, you would need managerial skills, you would need problem-solving skills.
True.
But there's one point that I want to draw attention to. See, and we have experienced this ourselves, right? So when we have taken care of terminally ill patients, we have handheld them when they are in their last stages. We have handled very severe cases at home. One thing that struck us is, unlike in a hospital, a healthcare worker, a nurse or a paramedic or a doctor, they are in the comfort of a community of people there, available there. The decision that they take is easier done there. Here, we will need somebody who will have the confidence and the guts to take decisions there. Even if you are aided by digital technology and things like that, ultimately the decision is yours. You have to live with that decision, right? So there will be many other repercussions of those things. I mean, we have had to have a session wherein our palliative doctors had to be debriefed after every death, right? Because then they carry it along for the next one. So a lot of psychological aspects also come up, right? So then that itself throws up another opportunity of, hey, do I need a counselor to have them? Can I afford this? Can there be some services like this, right? So it's a very many splendid thing that we must enjoy as we discover as it goes, and then fill in the gaps. And then at some point of time, we will consolidate them and say, hey, this kind of an organization makes sense. Sorry, Suresh.
No, thank you. I think great points that you made. I just wanted to kind of lend the voice to a very important point in addition to what you've said, is that with technology comes an improvement in access. And when access is improved, it kind of puts pressure on existing systems, right? Simple thing today, if you see in the pandemic, there's no shortage of kits, testing kits, but you have shortage of people who take the swabs. So just put in, what if 100,000 clinics come? What if Ayushman Bharat insurance kicks in? When it really comes in, when the guys from the hinterland come into the treatment pool, do we have diagnostic support, other paraphernalia of paramedical support to kind of run the show? Is there an immediate point of the next 3 years where it will go? Just to kind of highlight the kind of pressure that will be in the system. Let's take India is, a diabetic capital of the world with 61 million people who are diabetics, right? Now, if you really kind of convert this into what kind of diagnostic tests that will require, it's somewhere around 2.5 billion glucose tests, 2.5 billion urine tests, and blood pressure testing, hematological testing, not to give rise to the number of kidney-related diseases or eye-related diseases that will spring. So these are pressures that are real time. It will not happen overnight, but technology has the habit of simply overwhelming opportunity, in the ability to impact pricing. Today, if you really look at diagnostics, there is your iPhone can, with the right kind of software, diagnose 36, kind of ailments, right? So be it an ECG or blood pressure or even diagnostic tests, right? You can take a large portion of them and you can do it at a fraction of cost. I was speaking to one startup called Amelioride, which has come out with a test, a Bangalore-based one, which can test malaria, chikungunya, and one more, I forget. Now, these are sequentially done. It takes 8 days, right, to get the tests, but it can be done in 10 minutes and it can be done at a fraction of the cost. So technology also impacts the pricing play that is there and allows more people to come in. And then it should not happen what we have learned from the pandemic, that there are too many aspirants in healthcare to get treated and we do not have the infrastructure. So I fathom a lot of players coming into these segments. There is an improvement of quality of care. Like Mr. Sundarajan said, there will be quality players with special skill sets. And there will also be in the field of, with so many devices and technology coming and data being thrown, you need to analyze that data, right? There are AI-based systems, ML-based systems, which kind of tend to re-inform you on how intelligent treatment can be given, or for that matter, analyze and at a policy level given. So analytics is something that will explode. And data mining and analytics is another place where you will see a lot of companies coming in, mining data, electronic, medical records. If you are like an Aadhaar card, today we have 1.2 billion people whom we know as identity, right? We have a face and a biologic print of theirs. Now imagine if you have electronic health records, even if you go half the way, what kind of analytics can you how can we inform ourselves better, right? So those are another set of job opportunities that will come there. So what I mean to say is that in the new emerging and in the traditional, there will be scale related and a new skill related both coming in from a job perspective, and that will become huge gaps which will be limiting, and I think that will create a kind of frustration if the ecosystem does not rise up to match the kind of ensuing demand.
Yeah.
And just to add to it, just a minute more. I think what then it will kindle is the trust of the consumers, right? So I think then a lot of people who are in healthcare industry will have to consistently see how empathy and trust of a consumer is always a paramount in whatever decisions that we take, and I think training all our workforce with empathy and building trust becomes one another important aspect.
Perfect. Really amazing viewpoint shared here, and I don't think so I have anything much to add, because all the eminent panelists have touched upon every aspect possible here. So moving on to the next question, and Suresh, I'm going to forward this to you. So would India see a skill demand gap? Would any of these skills need training, infrastructure, and L&D?
Oh yes. We talked about the established healthcare people like the insurance, pharma, and hospitals. When they change tag, many of them would not require as many people. Pharma, some of the big pharmas have 15,000 field force, right? Medical reps who are, even if they require, they would not want them to have them in their roles. So you will see a lot of gig jobs getting created, contracting of various jobs happening, and therefore, so that's one. Second is people who are used to a certain way of doing a job have to do something different. Imagine the field force of pharma companies. Let's take one company for example. Let's say Cipla has 16,000 field force. And now the field force is sitting at home because they're not able to go out and meet doctors. You need to differently enable them, right? And you need to reskill them and repurpose them. So that's the first challenge. In many of the existing jobs that exist, if you want to do it with the social heart, and not just kind of throw them away, there is a big remit on reskilling people. So that's one thing, and that goes on, depends on which sector you are. Are you on insurance or pharma or hospitals, or you are on the other sectors of healthcare? So reskilling will be very important, because what we are seeing here in the pandemic is an adoption of technology both by the user and the provider. And this is creating a change of a magnitude which has never been seen before, right? If you really look at some of the L&D budgets from an HR point of view, yeah, they were more seen by the larger part of the organization as nice to do. And yes, the first cull that we would do when we have a profit protection plan and stuff like that. But today we are at a stage where uh, reskilling is becoming very important as people are changing the way they approach things, the way they work. The second is upskilling, right? Uh, Clearly, the demands in analytics, the ability to handle equipment at various levels. For a doctor to indulge in robotics, right? If a surgeon, if you see in another 5 years, a large part of what the surgeon does, especially daycare surgeries, are all going to be robotic surgeries. And there is a technology adoption that is required. There are new orphan diseases, new diseases that are coming. People are living longer, and you remote monitoring and all that will require a kind of reading of the data and kind of converting it into a solution or therapy. And from a doctor's side, a provider's side, there is a lot of upskilling that is required and will happen. If you ask me, are there companies that are doing it? And that's a big, I know of one or two edutech companies that are focusing in this space, right, of educating doctors and healthcare people. So upskilling also will be, a very big part. Uh, Analytics, in the space of analytics and where analytics can apply in the healthcare continuum, is again something that you will have jobs. In public health, I think a large portion of focus is now turned towards public health. Are we running it properly? Are we diverting resources to the right areas to create the maximum impact? Is the social impact enlarging? So I think public health will have a lot of government, private, and public participation in it. And I think a large part of the employment generation will happen in that space as well. You will have, be it organizations, whatever, if they want a healthcare for their employees, as Samata was alluding to, how would you kind of get their well-being? So in terms of a larger health, and nuances like where Sundarajan was going. Now, when you take, you have to make decisions at the spur of moment, when you're there and confronted in front of the patients, managing the aftermath, all those required training, and that's upskilling in some way. And to the masses and scale, right? If you are trying to take, healthcare to the hinterland, and if you are moving from a 40% penetration to even 60, 70%, the large amount of people you would have to get for diagnostic services, patient attendant services, to get new people there is absolutely, nursing. All are pressure points where you will have to kind of upskill, reskill, and get new bodies on the job. So this, and the last point is, as you see, the number of startups in the healthcare continuum are exponentially increasing. There has to be a mindset change from, established big company jobs to startup jobs, right? So from, as we are moving into a gig economy, when contracting is also kind of increasing, how would the mindset of prospective, skilled, super skilled, and at the same time underskilled jobs, what will be the mindset? And somebody has to play a role in kind of making job opportunities attractive in a gig economy. So gig jobs will kind of really take over. And are we really currently, do we have the infrastructure to manage these gig jobs? Now, I have a suggestion for TeamLease, to play a lead role in advocacy on this point of view, to understand what's happening in the healthcare innovation and healthcare startup domain. You can either take up an incubation or an accelerator or partner with them and kind of very actively play advocacy in this role, in this area. So these are some of my thoughts and comments, on how jobs will turn. Are there skill gaps? What are the areas where you will find skills? And I think we are at an interesting point in the history of healthcare, an inflecting point, I would say, where we do not have full visibility of what is ahead, but all what we know is going to be pandemonium, in the process of change. So I think a lot has to be done in advocacy as well. And companies like TeamLease, Randstad, whatever you have, are very ideally positioned. Unfortunately, there are not too many players there. It's kind of an opportunity as well as something that we have to put together moving forward.
Rightly said, Suresh. Samata, how about you? What is your take on this?
No, I think Suresh has covered the end to end of it. Maybe, I'll just take 1 minute and maybe give it, if you look at it from a HR's point of view, right? Because I just thought maybe I will sort of summarize everything that he said from a HR point of view. So how would I see my teams changing their roles, right? So I think a hiring person will not only now look at finding a Superman, but finding out what 3 skills of the Superman is available and makes him a Superman, and how can we get a few, 2, 3 other skills as a gig working project-based thing. So the hiring team will basically, the talent acquisition team will act like a mentor, a manpower planning organization, which will sort of help understand the market skill availability and help in building the right mix inside the organization. I think that's one way in which it is going to change for organizations. The second way, I think the OD leaders, the L&D leaders are going to be organization development leaders, where they'll have to see where is it that, apart from all the skills that require an importance, right? Maybe building relationship management skills, building right communication skills and things of that sort. I think one important thing that the OD leaders will play a role is in mind training people with change, because change is going to be so fast and so unreal for people to accept that, training them for resilience, training them to accept the change fast as real, I think is going to, the OD leaders are going to play a immense important role there. The business partners are going to move away from the transactional, operational, exit interviews kind of a role to reviewing data and building business intelligence, basically managing talent and seeing where the upskilling is important and where the reskilling is important. I think that's exactly where the business partners are going to play a role. And hence it's going to sort of see a shift, even from the human resources department perspective, on how we look at talent and how we look at growing talent inside organizations. So, and this is more so going to happen in healthcare, is going to see that multifold effect of growth in the next 4-5 years for sure.
Right. Rightly put it, Samata. So the next question here is, the demand for healthcare products and service is going to see a steep rise in creating more job opportunities. So your take on this? I guess I will take, and I'll give you a break. I'll take this question. And So the demand for healthcare products and services, so very simply put, services, when it comes to services, we have to touch upon the fact that the inside sales role has increased. When I say inside sales role, whichever domain that we are here talking about, as we've already penned down that physical, digital, we have coined that term. So when it comes to that, today we are looking at soft skills, which requires persuasion, which requires a person to be salesy. When I say salesy, there are a lot of things that comes to your mind, but the person has to have the emotional intelligence. The person has to have empathy when the person is talking to the patient, because the end user there is a patient or a caregiver. So those are very important skills that a person needs to kind of work on. Other than, of course, the other demand that is required, the other skill sets that are required. But these soft skills is another very important aspect for people to work on, which of course the training, and I guess when from the HR point of view, we definitely need to look into the training part of it. We need to train our resources. That is going to be the new way of taking up, because we don't expect them to. So that definitely is required. A lot of changes in L&D and all of that. So that is my take. What about you, Samata? What is your take on this?
I think I completely agree with you, Namrata. I think it's going to build its own, what do you say? There's going to be a lot of change management, skilling and reskilling. Having said that, I think a lot of job markets are also going to open up for, you know, phlebotomists, people who are actually required on the go to, help with blood samples at home. The job market is also going to open up for, I'm sorry, I sort of go blank right now, but
no problem at all.
The job market is definitely going to open up for home isolations. How this, the traditional, the remote villages had their own traditional, nurses who were taking care of be it pregnancy, childbirth, small ailments at home, how they can be trained virtually and to do some of this work. I think OD is going to play a role over there as well. I think, yeah, yes.
Right. Yeah. And to add to it, for that matter, even the technology. So data mining and user experience, the UI UX, because the more easier for us to understand. So that is another aspect which is going to take a leap and bound jump kind of a thing. So yes, Sundarajan, you
just
also
wanted to add to what you were saying. I think one more trend that we will see is some of the services would move to DIY, do it yourself kind of services, right? So it would appear to be replacing some jobs, right? So that pressure would also come in, and then there would be many more new services which you will need people to focus on, and this must happen. This is for the good, because as we understand certain services better and better, we have devices that can do that, people can do it themselves, then wellness will spread. Healthcare would actually be more accessible to more and more people. We cannot rely entirely on human resources to fulfill all the service requirements. So we must consider this also coming in, and the DIY kind of devices. I think Suresh also alluded to a lot of devices that would be evolving to be suitable at home environment. That must come in, and then the process, then the remote monitoring, remote diagnostics should become simpler and more self-service based, in order to meet the skill resource gap, even as the supply demand gap is getting bridged, right? So we will see these contradicting things coming in. Even on the artificial intelligence part of it, as Suresh was talking about, all the artificial intelligence part today is very narrow intelligence, right? It needs the wisdom of a doctor So it will never replace a doctor to act upon it, right? It can actually be an aid, and so those are also seemingly contradictory things, but then ultimately they all add up to a very different mix of an industry that is far more powerful, far more ubiquitous in rendering the services. So that's what I want to add.
Thanks.
One very important addition to what Sundarajan and all of you are saying is I think if you want people at various stages, as we have described healthcare, do you have an estimation of it now? Honestly, no. And it's like, as you plow through cloud cover, to the visibility that you have on that day, how are you able to kind of, mop up and kind of play a role in providing for the skill and talent is one. Second is, I think we need to also, create some kind of finishing school for healthcare, to paint a comprehensive picture of healthcare and how, at a policy level, at a outcome improvement impact level, at an entrepreneurship level, at social impact, health impact level, it's very important for people to come out with people who are aware, so today, if you really see the graduates who come, or people who kind of come out of school or drop out of college, or for that matter, even technically qualified, will they be ready to all what we are saying today? And therefore, is there a need for a finishing school? The answer to that, to my mind, is a big yes. Because you need people to move away from standard curriculums or include, in addition to what they're doing, on how the healthcare ecosystem is actually advancing at various levels, right? And so there has to be encouragement for entrepreneurship, encouragement to kind of skill up and understand and be aware of what is happening, and kind of create healthcare ready workers at various levels. So, I was talking about advocacy. This is an important part of advocacy. So if you really ask me, in addition to reskilling and upskilling, when you leave it to companies, there isn't much that is going to happen. People look at their P&L or the balance sheet and then decide whether they want to go through it or no. But if you want to provide for an incoming future, to understand and kind of predict these large moves, to my mind, currently there are too many balls in the air, and to kind of make a prediction requires a little bit of an effort. And therefore, I would just want to say that there has to be a larger possibility painting on what will make healthcare look better. What are the possibilities? How do we provide for talent for all those? Has to be part of the efficacy through some finishing school methodology to add to all the L&D or OD work that we have. That I thought would be effective add-on.
Right. So let's take a pause here, and we are now open to audience question. Yes.
So Namrata, I think we should open the house for audience questions and request audience to please type in their questions in the chat box. While we already had a few questions already typed in and received, which we have shared with you, Namrata. So you can start with those, and then the rest we can take on. Yeah.
Sure. So this is question to Sundarajan here. And the person is Ravi Kumar. He's the HR head at Columbia Asia Hospital. So his question is, do you see a jump in investment in the healthcare sector, since we have seen challenges in the sector happen due to COVID, and how the industry is getting up the sector in terms of infrastructure, job, logistic, and distribution?
Yeah, I think the last year or 2 years, I think, from 2020, since the pandemic has started, and focus of investment in healthcare sector has definitely increased. I don't have the numbers at the top of my fingers, but a lot of such investments have been in exploring new business models compared to pre-COVID times, right? Where the alternative models are being encouraged and being supported. Having said that, healthcare investors are also a little bit cautious compared to the other investors, because it takes a lot of time to really start giving returns. So a lot of validation is required, a lot of traction is required, and that caution continues to be there. However, we do see that a larger interest in investing in healthcare is indeed there. And I'm sorry, what is the second question? We can't hear you. Oh, sorry, you're muted.
Yeah,
Okay, no.
sorry. So do you see the jump in investment in healthcare sector and due to COVID, and how is industry gearing up the sector in terms of infrastructure, jobs, logistic, and distribution?
Yeah, I think that's also summarizes what we all spoke about, right? I mean, a lot of jobs, a lot of logistics, the deliveries, the point of care being shifted actually gives rise to a lot of those opportunities. The infrastructure, essentially, I see a lot of digital infrastructure being created in extending the care from the hospital to the point of care, and also a lot of digitization of health records, like what Suresh was pointing out. Those also those are the kind of infrastructure that I foresee. I mean, the investment in the traditional infrastructure would of course probably continue. I don't see that, but the growth would be in these kind of digitized infrastructures and decentralization infrastructure for decentralized care that is cropping up.
I want to add a couple of things, because I think this is a very, very important topic on investments. Currently, investments in healthcare, a lot of it is going to kind of API, supply chain oriented investments. So a lot of government concessions on, import substitutes, and kind of being able to be a supplier to the world on APIs, essentially arising from a supply chain crisis that we saw a year ago. So a lot of investment is being channelized there. But into the other aspects of healthcare that we talked about now, how much of it is coming? I think, I've very closely followed the NSR cell and a couple of incubators, if you may. The pecking order, healthcare is like the bottom. One of the things that I often hear is some of the examples of technology, of the Portia kind of the, not actually having played up very well, to their expectation. Of course, Portia did very well during the pandemic, but the investors are looking at, a unicorn in the making in the next 4 or 5 years in a healthcare. And they are not able to see what they see in fintech or edutech, for that matter, in healthcare or any other sector, right? And therefore, there has been a very cautiousness. In fact, when I spoke to the director of NSR Cell, he was saying, we want companies in healthcare to come up. There are people coming, but the thing is, the lens through which the investors see healthcare has to kind of moderate a little, and the kind of funds, debt funds or whatever that are available has to increase through multiple fold. What is, while healthcare, any improvement that you make is a long-standing return. So it's not like, unfortunately, I dread to use this word, the Ponzi kind of a return, scheme kind of a return that is kind of bringing in investors to net-based business models, and the geometric proportion in which they see the customers coming in, either as a marketplace or whatever service that you do, is what is encouraging them. They want to see a unicorn. But a healthcare company, there aren't going to be too many unicorns. There will be big companies for sure, but
Suresh, I would like to interrupt you here because the next question also is directed at you itself, and let me kind of read that out to you. So this question is from Ankita Sinha. She's the Associate Director Strategy, SARE Therapeutics. Her question is, which all changes that HCP's practitioners has to ready to adopt for practice continuity when it comes to in-clinic consultation versus online consultation? Do you want me to repeat?
Yes. Indeed.
Okay. Which all changes that HCP's practitioners has to ready to adopt for practice continuity when it comes to in-clinic consultation versus online consultation?
Well, see, today the doctor is actually making a choice. I want to give a statistic on this. Telehealth and remote health, consulting has in the US has gone up from about 18% to 48%, in 2 years, enhanced by so 48% of the doctors in the US actually promote telehealth today. And the numbers could be very similar in the cities in India. And therefore, doctors are also realizing that patients, when I want a specialist, in India, there are two types of care, right? One is the basic care at a general practitioner level. The other is a specialized care. And you also have second consults. So from a general practitioner's care or a doctor's consulting, to be able to provide a consultation to the patient, the doctor is realizing that there are times when he can do it well. Face-to-face is something that he already does, and he can supplement his income through telehealth services. He is able to kind of do a lot of follow-up, and reserve his time for the patients who come face-to-face in a little more. So if you really ask me, one is the revenue model that it is appearing to the doctor is encouraging, and it is likely to continue. The second is that a lot of patient hesitancy in having to travel to the doctor and then putting away an healthcare intervention and thereby outcomes being kind of not as ideal will change if they are able to kind of consult their doctor, and this is especially for chronic ailments, right? In cardiovascular, in cancer care, in kind of diabetes. So you're able to kind of do a teleconsult and a telehealth. So the point I'm trying to say is that it is favorable for the doctor and for the patient. And when the two sides of the coin are looking at it favorably, this practice would indeed survive, and it will cause change in behavior both at the doctor and at the patient level. I'm not sure if I answered Ankita's question, but that's something that she can take away.
All right, so we have the next question here. Yeah. So according to you, and Sundarajan, if you can address this one, according to you, what are the three changes in healthcare that we have adopted during the pandemic will remain and continue to be practiced after everything comes to normal, pre-pandemic environment?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I keep asking myself this. I mean, it's like gazing into the crystal ball a bit. As I mentioned, we really saw a decline to pre-COVID levels after the first wave. But then there is some habits do remain, right? So one of the change that will continue to remain is people will look for online service, acquiring services online as a first approach, unless it's they think it's very serious and they want to consult somebody in person. I think that is a big shift. Earlier, it wouldn't even occur to people that one can explore these kind of things. It's a big basket thing, right? If it's a commodity, if it is something that I can trust with big basket, I'll try that first, and then if not, if it's something special, I will do that. So I think that continues to remain. Second thing I've seen a change in the mindset of doctors who adopted this is that they are more embracing wanting to keep in touch with the patient, and also being able to deliver care, because just keeping in touch without delivering care is not really retaining patients. So I do see that there is an openness in them, and that will not go away. The third thing that I think has already set the ball rolling is adoption of digital health in some way or the other amongst all the hospitals. And a lot of hospitals themselves are using this as extending their infrastructure. So these three things, I think in some measure or the other will remain there. Whether it will be adopted more or less will depend on many factors, on the trust that you have, on the efficiency that it will bring in, on the efficacy of that. And as the services and the ecosystem come together to improve those three factors, we will see more and more adoption of that. And this will take time. This will take about 3 to 4 years before a significant part of it continues to be there, right?
Right. Thank you, Sundarajan. Yes, Samata.
Wanting to add an extension point on the trust bit is the trend that I have at least seen is that there are many times that patients have gone to hospitals and they have used the online consult space to validate and take a second opinion. So sort of second opinions are also becoming faster with our online consult kind of a thing. So just wanted to add that in as an input, because that's one trend that we've seen as an organization, where a second opinion is sought through a doctor on an online consult.
Right. Thank you for all that. Now I would request Rashmita to take over.
Thank you, Namrata, and thank you all. So we have come to the end of a great session. On behalf of TeamLease, I thank each of the panelists for contributing their time and sharing the ideas, and also to our participants for an interactive session. TeamLease takes this opportunity to thank and honor all the healthcare professionals for the contribution to the society in battling this crisis. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Stay safe, stay healthy, take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.